go. Okay. So the first question that we have is, so how long have you been a caregiver and for who are you a caregiver for?
I have been a caregiver for 4 years, and I was a caregiver for my grandmother, but she has since passed, and I am now one for my mom.
Okay. Sorry to hear that. Where does your mom live? Or is she living with you or?
So I ended up moving from New York home. I'm sorry. Okay, I just went out.
Oh, no worries.
So I ended up moving home to my childhood home so that I could care for them. So I live with her technically.
Okay. Okay. That's a huge move and transition. Was that a major shift in your life, would you feel, to be able to come back home and do that?
Incredibly. New York was somewhere that I had always wanted to live, and I absolutely loved it. And I had started building up my career there and networking and whatnot. And ever since having to come home, I pretty much had to start all over. I hadn't lived in the city of I hadn't lived in the city of LA since I was 17. So like, wow. It was about 14 years almost. And so having to move back and learn the city all over again and make friends all over again and find work all over again and all that sort of stuff, it was really hard.
Well, that's a really interesting point to bring up, because a lot of the information that we see around the caregiver burden, they do mention financial as well as mental and physical, but the displacement side is a lot as well. Integrating into a new social community, setting yourself up in a new career, especially if you haven't been there in a while. I can imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question I have here is, are you the sole caregiver for your mom right now? Do you have siblings that are helping you, or what is the care responsibility split for you?
I am an only child, so okay. Yeah, I am the sole and primary.
Okay. Okay. And in regards to caregiving right now, or at least your experiences so far, this is a twofold question, but what would you think has been the most rewarding experience you've had, and what has been the most challenging experience that you've had?
I think the most rewarding experience is that knowing that once this is all over, I won't have any regrets as it pertains to her. The most challenging part is starting my life over. I had a really hard time like quitting a job I loved and breaking up with my boyfriend, and
Wow.
um, I think more of the complications that I experienced that make it hard now also is that she's declining more steadily. And so there's always something new that I have to figure out. It's made me really good at being able to adapt, but it can be a headache sometimes.
Okay. Okay. No, thank you for sharing. Do you feel as though, as your mother is going through this progression, and you're figuring out and you're experiencing these new symptoms together as a family, are you doing these alone? Do you have support from a physician or a healthcare group? What is that interplay like for you?
Right. So prior to quarantine, my mom went to an adult day center for about 5 hours a day.
Okay.
And, since quarantine, it's pretty much been me doing 24/7 care. And so I don't necessarily have help right now. We don't have people who are, coming here to help. Her center, they do drop off meals, which is helpful. They'll also drop off toilet paper or body soap. And so having things like that has helped.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. And then when you are looking for support or tools to help you in your caregiving experience, is there any particular places that you turn? Are there things that you like to use right now?
So tools. Yeah. So it's interesting because like she has no attention span at all. So like if I try to do an arts and crafts project with her, she gets uninterested very quickly. Something that has helped me personally is that she had forgotten how to flush the toilet, and so we purchased an automatic flusher system for residential toilets,
Oh, wow.
which was so hard to find because literally only one company makes them, but it's been a lifesaver, like super duper.
Okay, wow. No, that's very innovative.
Yeah.
Okay. A question relating to your mother, but how do you think or gauge how she's feeling most of the days?
Usually when I put on music, I can tell.
Oh, wow.
So if I know she's having a good day, she'll like hop up and start dancing. And usually I can tell when we'll have a more lax day or she's not comprehending, when she just really, when it seems like she can't even hear the music, and so
Okay.
she'll give no response at all. And
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And are these songs that you play that are her favorites from the past, or are these new
Mm,
songs, or what is that relationship like?
no,
Okay.
yeah. So this is all music from her time. Like
Hmm.
I try to switch it up and play something a bit more current, but she is not interested at all. She likes songs that she can also sing to.
Oh, okay. Okay, awesome. Um, Now, do you, while you guys are living at home, what is the relationship like with nature? Do you guys like to go outside or to do things outside of the home, or does she feel more safe at home? What is your relationship with that?
Yeah, so lately I noticed her not wanting to leave without, so she for the first few years she would walk the dog.
Hmm.
Lately I've noticed her not wanting to.
Hmm.
Then about 2 weeks ago we had this one incident where she actually walked him, and then she ended up over a mile away.
Oh,
And
wow.
so that let me know that that can't happen anymore. And so her relationship to nature is fine. Like
Hmm.
walk the we walk the dog together,
Hmm.
and she likes that, and sometimes we'll pick flowers and make bouquets, and she likes that also, but we don't get too much environmental stimulation.
Okay. Okay. And then, so moving forward, with you, and your mother and her experience right now, where do you see care? Where would you like care to remain moving forward? Would you like, best case scenario is to her and for you and her to be living together, her to continue at the day treatment facility when it opens back up, or perhaps moving into a facility on her own, or what's best case scenario for you?
For me, wow. She likes she likes going to the center, so I wouldn't want to take that from her. And I know that she wouldn't necessarily be very, very comfortable a um, at a home,
Hmm.
because right now I'm not married, and I don't have a slew of other responsibilities outside of her. I
Hmm.
would like to keep her home. I also think that she would be more comfortable that way also. However, I would love the finances to hire someone who's here,
Hmm.
who can, help me, or even help her like bathe and use the restroom, and just different tasks.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that's a great point to bring up, and it sort of raises what it is that we were trying to do here at the company. At least for us, we want to be able to support caregivers to be able to do as much as they can in their day to day. So, and we can talk about your mother's experience with technology earlier compared to now. But for us, what we would like to do is to use our application to be able to provide caregivers some updates throughout the day, whether their loved one, so in this case, your mother has taken her medications, has had her meals, and depending on their tech ability, either the individual would be inputting that information directly into our application, then you would be aware wherever you are, or if perhaps you have somebody providing care for her at home, they would provide the information in the application, and you would be able to have an understanding wherever you are, just in order to give you, I would say, some time back, I think is something that we were thinking, especially depending on if you need to go to work, for example, or grocery shopping, even anything outside of the home, just to be able to provide some more transparency. Sort of the idea that we have behind this, because a lot of the things that you mentioned as well is aging in place is something that we would love to be able to foster. Because there's a huge financial burden, first of all, going to homes and providing that 24/7 care for your loved one. And it's not as personal, and that immediate connection isn't there. But then the burden of caregiving as somebody progresses is so hard.
Yeah, yeah.
So in terms of, I would say, caregiver support, and over the next few years of your life, how would you feel supported? What are things that tech companies like I could do, or other companies in this space could do, to make you feel that you have the support of all of the resources that are available?
Huh. Good question. I guess I would probably need a little bit more time to
For sure.
think about that, but I know that my home is, fairly secured, but I know that some sort of like tracking system would help a lot of people. I know that so like when you say tech, what exactly do you mean?
For sure. So at least for us as a company, the way that we're starting is with a mobile application for smartphones, for both yourself and for your loved one. And depending on the ability of the loved one to be able to interact with technology, it'll remain a mobile application where they're communicating with a chat bot that'll send them their messages, check in and say, hi, how are you? Have you taken your med? Or how are you feeling today? And then providing that information back to you. And then as the ability to interact with tech declines, then we would love to be able to move our chatbot away from the mobile application towards voice, perhaps in a Google Home or an Amazon Alexa speaker in your home. And they communicate with the application through that pattern. And then if things progress even further, working directly with a care provider who would come in and assist you with tasks, and they would manually enter in the information, at least on the care receiver side, to your
Right.
loved one. And then for you and for caregivers, what we want to do is build as much transparency and means to understand what's happening in your loved one's life as possible. And then provide resources and support, and ultimately use our platform to connect you with other caregivers as well, who perhaps have tips and tricks.
Okay. Yeah. I think the technological aspect of it, it would have been good for my mom when she was starting out.
Hmm.
Right now, she's a little bit past that
Hmm.
point. But yeah, I think that um, having a care provider who would then log in whatever info that she comes into contact with while here would be helpful. That way I can know
Hmm.
and like be updated with what's going on with my mom, um, and have a rec record of it that I can take to doctor's appointments and, you know,
Hmm.
I think that right now I'm at the point where I like need an extra body. And so I'm trying to figure out like what other sort of technological stuff would help.
Okay. Okay, thank you for sharing. Okay, I have two last questions. Thank you so much for your time for doing
Yeah.
this with me. But in your time being a caregiver thus far, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned?
Hmm. How to adapt. Um, my lessons would be more about me and less her,
Hmm.
but like it's absolutely taught me about like the circle of life, sort of like how, you know, we get cared for and then we end up doing the caring. However, prior to caring for her, I worked in TV, and TV is one of those fields where you need to be there. And because I could no longer be there, I ended up pivoting
Hmm.
my career choice, and I've started writing for TV.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah, and so it's just really kind of taught me that I, as long as you can adapt to a situation, you can still get what you want. It just may not be exactly how you saw it. And like, you know, since I'm home taking care of her, writing was something that I now had the time to do. And so, like, lately I've been getting a lot more recognition for it. And it's partly because of the amount of time I've now had to dedicate to that craft.
Okay, that's exciting.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah, it's definitely a story of resilience for sure. And being able to make the most of this situation. That speaks a lot to your character. So thank you for sharing.
absolutely.
Um, okay,
And
and then, oh, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say that right now I'm like trying to figure out how to write something about the experience of caring for someone who who has Alzheimer's or dementia, and it proves not easy actually. And so I'm trying to figure it out because I think it's a story that people need, especially because there will be more seniors who have it and more people needing to then take care of their loved ones who have it also.
No, that's inspiring. And it's a disease and a burden that's growing across the globe as well. And I think Yeah, a lot of what's happening too, as well, on the science side of things, is it's been tough for researchers as well, working against something for so long, and trying to bring together cures and to move forward, whereas the global burden is continuing to rise. So I think this is definitely a time as well to not say that this perhaps is something that we as a society have to endure. This is something that will push us even further to be resilient in situations like this, to push ourselves on the scientific boundaries, to provide better care, to utilize tech better. I think one of the reasons why I started this as well is when you look at an elderly population, even without any ailments, it's usually like oil and water mixing tech. And I think that's not the right approach. I think we can be more adaptable and figure out their needs better and be able to mold our technology around them instead of just choosing specific markets. And so I hope with what we're doing and with other companies moving forward, we'll see this as an opportunity to use our resources to provide some aid. But then I think the last question, oh, go ahead.
With more millennials starting to care for people, do you think that it will be easier to start implementing tech there?
I think so. I think millennials as a group are very passion oriented. And I think they have to identify what their passion is, and then they'll put 100% of their efforts into it. So I think a lot of the various industries where, for example, this is an industry that's very close to home for me. I know for some other folks, it could be tackling hunger and poverty, for example, and they will put all of their resources towards it. But I think the millennial generation and the one coming after as well, who just graduated, are ready to make a change and utilize their resources to do so. It's less of living in the status quo. And I think that's actually a perfect transition to my last question, because I think as a company, with everything that's happening in the States right now, and the murder of George Floyd, and us as a company wanting to raise awareness for Black Lives Matter in the most appropriate way that we can, which is by supporting caregivers, I would love to know how this experience, if it's added an extra burden to you, how you're able to resolve this, and how that affects your caregiving experience as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's exhausting. And then caring for someone on top of that is exhausting. So it's just been a very exhausting few weeks.
Mhm.
I see the nation handling it differently than it had in the past.
Mhm.
Mind you, because so many protests and riots and so on. But something about this, something about this time feels like it can and will influence change. And that's exciting. But of course, my mom has no clue. And so, like,
Mhm.
caring for her is also a moment of me, stepping outside of that and not having to,
Mhm.
think about it. And so caring for her has actually been a sort of reprieve from the news cycle and posts on Twitter and so on. And so, like it's exhausting, but it's
Mhm.
also very much so uh appreciated distraction.
Okay, I completely understand that on the distraction side. So thank you so much for sharing your perspective. And that's everything that I wanted to ask you in terms of our interview transcript. I'm going to turn off the recording.